Okay, listen. So today I'm going to be doing something definitely different than I've been doing thus far, which has just been breakdowns of College Football 25, about the gameplay deep dive and the Dynasty deep dive. But today I'm not going to be talking about any of that. I'm just going to be giving tips that I personally use or have used in order to just derive more joy and create a more immersive experience whenever I'm playing my Dynasty. So, maybe all these won't work for you. Maybe not all these sound interesting to you, but even if you try 1, 2, 3, it's something that could potentially just create a better experience for you. How many times have you started a Dynasty, you've gotten a season or two in, and then it just doesn't keep your attention anymore, right? You feel like it's not worth grinding anymore and you just stop and start over. I hate doing that. I only want to do one Dynasty for the entire year. That's how I go about it anyway. Like I said, I'm going to give you my tips here, and please feel free to share yours as well in the comments, because anybody that's watching this right now, they're doing it for the same reason. They want to figure out ways to create more joy for themselves and create a more immersive experience when playing this game mode. So let's just get started. Okay, so tip number 1 we have here is going to be utilizing your coordinator's playbooks, and that's exactly what it sounds like, guys. This one's pretty popular, so you've probably heard of this at some point, but if not, I'm just going to explain what it means real quick. I'm pulling up a screenshot for you from the Dynasty Deep Dive. So this only applies if you are the head coach, right? If you're not playing as the head coach at this point in time, this would not apply to you. But if you're the head coach, you're Jackson Anderson here, and then your offensive coordinator has a pro style scheme, so it's only telling you the schemes here, but you can figure out the actual playbooks if you just go into their information in the game. Presumably that's how it worked in NCAA 14. We assume that we're going to be able to figure out what playbooks they have assigned as well. The same thing with your defensive coordinator here. They run a 3-4 multiple scheme. So for offense, let's just say, for example, the playbook would be Boise State. Boise State runs a pro style offense, or Michigan from last year. They had modern concepts, but it was still a pro style offense. You have one of those assigned for him. That's which one you have to use, period. No ways around it. Whatever they have assigned as their playbook, you got to use it. And then the same thing for this defensive coordinator here, 3-4 multiple. That's teams like, especially recently, before his retirement, of course, Nick Saban, Alabama. Typically, they've been a 3-4 base, but these past few years, especially with the extremely athletic edge rushers, these outside linebackers, with guys like Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, he's been using them in coverage a lot more than he has in the past with, as edge rushers, but, having them do other things as well. So if, for example, that was Alabama's playbook for defense, you would have to use it, period. There's just no ways around it. And what that is really going to do, especially now with the new coaching carousel and being able to actually choose which coordinators you get, it's going to make the offseason and the hiring process so much more impactful, so much more stressful, honestly, but so much more consequential. It's going to make it more difficult, and it's going to make it matter so much more, because you can't just go pick whatever you want to do, right? You can't just pick whatever playbooks you want to do anymore. You have to go find guys that really fit the way you're trying to go. And if you don't bring in the proper guys, it's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough. It's going to make the dynasty building experience just a lot tougher, a lot more immersive. So yeah, that's tip number 1. That's one I really like a lot, and I think a lot of people use this one already, and a lot of people know about this one, but in case you didn't, yeah, there you go. Okay, so for number 2, this one's a little bit more in the weeds, but hear me out. Let me try to explain what I mean. But this one is going to be being conscious of your team's geography. So I kind of broke this down into 3 different subparts. So for number 1, it's something so simple, and it's something you probably do notice, but I feel like a lot of people just turn their brain off and they don't really even notice this. But the weather of your home games, that matters, right? Especially if you're actually trying to have a very immersive and just rich experience where if you're up in the Pacific Northwest, it's gonna rain a lot during your home games. That's gonna matter, right? If you're just in the north in general, it's gonna be snowing once depending on where you're at, where you're located, it might be end of October, early November, whenever it starts snowing, and that's something that just adds a bit more realism to the experience, and just like I said, just fully appreciating that whenever it occurs, and not just being like, fuck, now I'm pissed off that I have this shitty ass weather. Fully embrace that and have that become part of your team's identity, right? And yeah, I think just appreciating that and not just being upset about the bad weather, that adds a lot to the actual experience itself. More importantly, are how your geography is going to tie into your recruiting now. So this is going to work a lot differently than it did in NCAA 14. So number one, and most importantly in my opinion, is in NCAA 14, teams weren't represented properly for the amount of players that were on their team that were from their state. So luckily this is something they talked about in the Dynasty Deep Dive, the recruiting section, is that now proximity to home for these recruits is going to be much more important, especially for schools that aren't these elite recruiters. So teams that are absolutely elite recruiters, they're going to be able to go wherever they want for talent, and that makes sense, right? But for the vast majority of teams, and it's not even like doesn't go for just bad teams. Like the bottom air quote bottom 80% of teams, this is how it is. They're made up of a ton, like a very high percentage of players that are from their state. And that's just, like I said, that's just how it is in real life. And so it's going to be very interesting now if this works the way that they're claiming it is. Say a team like, let's use Wisconsin in this example. Wisconsin in real life. This past year, Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. Their number 2 back, Acker, who was their fullback before, from Wisconsin. Their starting fullback from Wisconsin, Kimray Dike, wide receiver 2 from Wisconsin. You would never get that if you simmed 5 years into the future playing the NCAA 14 video game before. You would never have that many Wisconsin players being starters for you. It just wouldn't happen. The talent from there wouldn't desire going to play to Wisconsin enough to mimic real life. So, you might have a couple starters from these states that put out less talent overall, but it didn't accurately mimic reality in terms of the percentage of players from that state that wanted to go to that university. And it seems like this is a conscious effort that they have for this new game. So that, it seems like something so small, but that's going to be very cool. A team like Wyoming, imagine having players from, Montana and Wyoming filling up your roster. Obviously not entirely, but just getting a much more accurate number of those players on your rosters is going to just, like I said, add just this little bit more realism to your experience, and it's going to just make it feel a lot more deep and rich. And I think that's actually everything under that. But like I said, just embracing geography, and then even consider geography whenever you're picking your positions, and I think it's going to add just another layer of depth to this game for you, and it's going to make you just feel more attached to your teams. Okay, tip number 3 is going to be try no switch. So if you guys don't know what no switch is, that is not switching what player you're using during the play. And what this one does is, this is another popular one, so you've probably heard of it, or maybe you've even tried it yourself or utilized it. This is one that I absolutely have to use because it's one of the biggest things that you can do to put yourself on a more even footing with the CPU, and therefore make yourself have a much more difficult and realistic experience, right? So just not switching the player that you're using. That means you're not, after you throw the ball, you're not switching and user catching with the whatever receiver you're using. And on defense, if you're playing on the defensive line and then it's a pitch outside, you can't get there, so then you switch to your linebacker. Or the biggest one is whenever the quarterback throws the ball and you're not using one of the DBs, and then you switch to the safety mid play, and then you can make a crazy play on the ball that you shouldn't have been able to make. Like if it was the CPU in that situation, they would not be able to make the play that you're making, because you're able to do things whenever you switch that the actual player, whenever it's computer controlled, can't do. So like I said, you're just giving yourself a massive advantage over the CPU that they can't combat because they just don't have human intelligence. So it's a very simple one, and it's tough to get used to. I know it. I know that. Believe me, I played switching for a very long time before I switched over. I don't know. It's probably been like 5 years now. But now that I do it, I can't go back, because it's the very best way to ensure that players are playing to their ratings. And that's just a very important aspect of the game to me, and that's something that you might want to try too then. Okay, so tip number 4 is to start out as a coordinator. That simple, right? One thing I did want to explain about this, well, first of all, almost all coaches do start out as a coordinator, right? Well, a lot of them start out as a graduate assistant, then they become a position coach, then they become a coordinator, then they become a head coach. You know, they have to go through the ranks. That's just the route that a lot of coaches have to go over time. But it's just much more realistic, if we're being real, to have to start out as a coordinator before head coach. But I know some people just want to have that full control and just be the head coach from the jump. And this is, like I said, these are just opinions and ideas for you to try and do whichever feels the best for you. But one thing I wanted to talk about this is in NCAA 14, you only had control over your side of the ball. So if you're the offensive coordinator, you could only play offense. The other half of the ball would be simmed. So that's the way I would personally do it. Once again, do what you want. You can only determine what's most fun for you, what creates the most joy for you. But if I were going the coordinator route, I would, say I want to be offensive coordinator. I would only play the offensive side of the ball. But also, if there were ways in the recruiting settings for me to do this, the way I would want to do it, and I would try to figure out a way to do, is I'd also only be recruiting the offensive players. I wouldn't even be touching the defensive players if, like I said, I could get those filled by the CPU somehow. So that's the way I'd want to do it, just to, I want to isolate my responsibilities as the coordinator, because they're not responsible for all these other things in the vast majority of situations. So that's the way I would do it. Maybe one of those different routes will be preferable for you, but you'll never know unless you try them. And like I said, these are just ideas for you to go out and try to figure out what's going to be the most fun for you. Okay, so tip number 5 is another pretty simple one, guys. This is going to be uniforms in stadium atmospheres. Pick ones you like. It's literally just that simple, right? You want to make sure that whatever team you're using, they are aesthetically pleasing to you, right? At the end of the day, that's all that matters, is making sure that you are having a good time with this. And what is something that you're going to be hammered over the head with if you're going for like a long form dynasty, one that's going to last a long time, and it's actually going to take a real rebuild to it, right? Is you're going to be seeing the uniforms and the stadiums over and over, right? You're going to have a lot of home games because you're going to have a lot of seasons to have to deal with this. So you want to make sure that there's not only preferably a lot of uniform combinations for the team that you're using, but just make sure that you like them, right? Art's subjective. Doesn't matter if anybody agrees with you. As long as you like them, that's all that matters. And then for the stadium atmospheres aspect of it, we know from the presentation deep dive and just listening to these guys talk about it, the traditions are really, the pageantry is really going to be something special in this game, right? Every single team has all the traditions just shoved into this game. I mean, even small teams like Ball State, for example, they do the little cardinal symbol with their hand. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. They make their hand look like a little bird, and then they fucking chirp, 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 chirp. That's what they do on third downs. It's annoying as shit. I looked that shit up on YouTube. It was hilarious. But stuff like that. Guess what? If I was a quarterback and I went into Ball State, I wouldn't want to have to listen to that because that would be annoying as hell. But it's funny and it's just unique, and it just adds so much, so much personality to your teams. So look into the traditions, right? Try out these different teams and figure out ones that just you gravitate towards. And I think that, once again, being conscious of the uniforms and the stadium atmospheres and what makes up the aesthetic side of your team, even the themes of the crowds, if you do stripes or if you do, the checker patterns or whatever have you, whiteouts, blackouts, whatever it is, look into all that and be conscious of it. And like I said, just appreciate these different things that are giving your team's personality. And I think it's really going to enhance your experience and add just a lot more immersion and a lot more just making you feel connected to your team. All right, guys, tip number 6 is just making the experience difficult for yourself. I know a lot of people, at the end of the day, it's a video game. They do it for fun, but fun is not, always the same for every person. Some people, fun is going out there and winning, 10 straight national championships, going 232-0, and that's what fun is to them. A lot of other people like me, I want to feel the fucking pain. I want it to be brutal. I want to pick up a bad team and I want to feel like a bad team, because that is how I feel most rewarded whenever I finally reach not even the mountaintop. You can feel yourself go from bad to like to average to slightly above average to, like I said, all the way up the rung. You can really feel that if you create a very difficult experience for yourself. So things that you can do to make that happen: obviously hard sliders, just difficult sliders. I create sliders myself. I will be putting out my own slider set. You'll see that. I'll probably post them on here, Operation Sports. I don't know, you'll see them. But make sure you're using difficult sliders if that's the route you want to go. Another thing you could do is just starting with really bad teams in P4 conferences. You could use a Northwestern, you could use a Vanderbilt, teams like those that they're going up against these big time teams and they're stuck in the conferences with them. Like, you're gonna have to play them every single year because they're conference games. You can't take them out, you know what I mean? So that's gonna be difficult. Or taking a G5 team, and remember, we can edit conferences. We have a lot of control over editing conferences this year. So if you really want it to be brutal, this is probably what I'll do. I'm not sure yet. I've not decided. I'll decide once I see the game and look at things myself. But you could take a G5 team and throw them in the SEC. Take a G5 team, throw them in the Big 10, ACC, Big 12. You can do things like that. And like I said, just create a very, very difficult situation. And yeah, don't turn off the coach firing. Leave that shit on. You'll really make it consequential, really make it difficult. And guess what? If you fail, then maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to abandon this. And maybe we're going to go to try to be a, play against teams that are more on our level. Maybe just drop down to the G5 and then try to work your way back up. But like I said, just put things into place that are going to make this experience more difficult for you. And you're going to have a much greater payoff if this rebuild doesn't take 1 or 2 or 3 seasons. If it's taken more like 7, 8, 9 to really reach the mountaintop, that's going to be such a much strong payoff. And I think that's definitely something for me that keeps me coming back and makes me feel like I need to grind. Whenever it's too easy, those are the types of experiences that I want to abandon. And I'm like, no, fuck this. I'm ready to just stop or start over or something and get to something else, because I need that difficulty. I need the challenge and these hurdles to overcome. So if you feel the same way, try those different ideas. Okay, tip number 7 is going to be using a Dynasty tracker, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's using this big ass document that's going to track all your information from your Dynasty year after year after year. But real quick, if you're still here, press that fucking like button for me. This shit takes time. I'm a working man, and I got to dedicate time and resources to making these. So if you're watching, I'd appreciate if you did that. It helps with the algorithm. Thanks. Listen, so obviously for this one, did Ben Roethlisberger. That's my quarterback. I'm a Pittsburgh fan. I'm a Steelers fan. It is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. We went with the Buffalo Bulls here. Had to color coordinate it because I need my shit clean. And then obviously you'd have to update the years. I've not updated this because I've not played a Dynasty in a long time. I spend a lot of time grinding, creating mods in CFBR, and working on the actual game. I don't get to play much. It's just how it's been. That's changing now, but that's how it's been for me. But I'm gonna give you a quick example. These trackers aren't as important for years 1, 2, 3 necessarily, but again, this is for if you're big into these long form rebuilds that you're going 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you're planning on really going down the line. Let's say, for example, this Tony Hawkins here, he's projected to only be a 64 overall, and you sign him in year 1, and then in his first year, you redshirt him 64. That's just not competitive enough for your roster, you determine. And then you know what you do at the end of the year? You force him in the transfer portal. But he has a good dev trait. He's got a good dev trait. He ends up going to a mediocre school, but a school that is good at developing talent. A team like Iowa State, you know what I'm saying? And guess what? Maybe by his redshirt senior year, he's up to like a 90 overall. He's an All-American. And you just never would have expected that because he was such a low overall, but a team that's really good at developing talent was able to take advantage of that. And guess what? Typically, you'd completely forget. You'd forget this dude existed. He was such a low overall, you're not even going to remember his name. You kicked him off the team, you would not remember. But if you're using this Dynasty tracker, stuff like this, you're able to go back and like, oh shit, I forgot that guy was here. Oh, that was a 5-star recruit at some time. Oh shit, this, that, everything else. It's going to be nice to be able to reference this down the road because you're just going to forget. There's too much information in these dynasties that you need to actually have it tracked and logged. That way you can go back and reference it. And I'm just going to go through these tab by tab real quick. Team MVPs, who's the best player on offense and defense. You can determine that. Put a name, put a stat, bam. This is keeping track of full stats, passing, rushing, receiving, defense, all that. You can track it. You keep track of your All-Americans, your freshman All-Americans, your All-Conference players, because guess what? After 1 or 2 years, yeah, you're going to remember probably most of them, if not all of them. But guess what? Once you're 5 years in, you're going to remember who your All-Conference quarterback was. You ain't going to remember the linemen. You ain't going to remember that. The defensive players, maybe you'll remember their names, or maybe you'll remember them existing, right? You'll remember like, oh shit, I had a really good edge rusher. I forget his fucking name because I'm 6 years in now. Now you're going to remember that. Stuff like that. It's just adding a little bit more immersion for yourself. And then it's going to be the same thing for season stats. Keeping track of your players that are drafted. Keeping track of, just your win-loss percentage. Some of this stuff might be in the game, right? It's probably going to be in the game. Most of this stuff won't be tracked to the level that a tracker is going to let you do it. One that I really like, keeping track of your records versus specific opponents. Say you're 8 years into playing in the Big Ten. It's going to be really cool to look back and see like, oh shit, how have I performed against Ohio State? I played them over the past 8 years. I played them, 5 times during the regular season, played them twice in the conference championship, played them once during the playoff, and then you're just going to have all of that logged here. And that's going to be very nice. And like I said, it's going to add a lot more personality to the teams and add that just this extra level of immersion. That's what it always comes back to, immersion and, just creating an enjoyable experience for you. And it's the same thing. We're tracking our coaching history, your recruit classes, your coach prestige by year, your team ratings by year, and then your coach staff history. Keeping track of all this stuff it's just going to add a lot more to your experience if you're someone like me that desires always having access to information. Okay, so yeah, this is really nice, and I'm gonna actually link this in the description for you guys. That way you can come in and edit it. I wish it could be something as detailed as like Tart from You Love Foods in the college football revamp community. He made one that was fully automated or almost fully automated for college football revamped, and we can't do stuff like that now because we can't mod it, right? It's not on PC anymore. But something a little more, I'll call this simplified, but something that you have to manually go in and edit and keep track of. I think this is a good happy medium. All right, guys, tip number 8 is going to be just be mindful of your starting archetype, right? Really make sure that you're choosing the right one for the starting team that you're going to be doing. So remember, we have Motivator, and that's going to actually help you progress your players quicker from how we explained it, right? That's going to actually help you have the best progression for your players. At least that's what the tree's going to be working you towards. Recruiter, that's going to be, helping you bring in the highly talented players out of high school. And then Tactician, that has nothing to do with even bringing in good players or making your players better in terms of increasing their stats full-time. These are specifically increasing your players' ratings and the way they perform on the field through even different mental attributes. So Tactician's a lot different than Motivator and Recruiter, as those deal with talent acquisition and then talent development. Tactician, remember, is specifically about making the players play better through the coach himself giving them different boosts. So one thing I wanted to discuss about this is being very mindful. Let's say Utah State specifically, actually, because we're going to be starting with small schools, right? We're not going to be starting with Utah. That's a good team. So Utah State, we want to start with Utah State. Which of those 3 archetypes do we want to begin with? If it's me, I'm saying Motivator. And I know everybody's going to want to do Recruiter. Everybody's going to want to do Recruiter because it's nice to bring in flashy, high 4-star and 5-star caliber players. That feels good. I think it's going to be smarter and more realistic if we go Motivator with a team like Utah State, because let's look at the states that surround Utah. Utah itself, obviously, that's going to be the home state. Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming. Nevada and Arizona admittedly do have a little bit of high school football talent. Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico don't at all. Utah, a tiny bit. But these aren't hotbeds, right? You're a few states away from California, you're a few states away from Texas. You really don't have that team or that state that is right next to you that you can really pull a ton of talent from to fill up your roster. So if what we're being told about the proximity to home mattering, especially when you're not one of those top echelon teams at bringing in recruits. So Utah State obviously is going to have to rely upon, the players that are closer to home, since they can't just go wherever they want all across the country to easily bring in players. Like in NCAA 14, if you wanted to make Florida a pipeline, but you were Hawaii, you could just do it. You could just put all Florida players on your board and you could make it happen. Apparently, from the way they're explaining it with all the different changes, it's just going to be tougher. You're really going to have to rely on those players that are close to home, because that's what's going to matter more for these teams that aren't elite. So I'm going motivator in that case. I'm going to be bringing in these 2-star guys from Wyoming and from Colorado and from Nevada, Utah, and I'm going to try to bring in, I know that they're not going to be great, right? There's just not going to be high-level recruits, or not that many high-level recruits from these surrounding states, and I'm just going to try to bring in as many guys as I can, and I'm going to rely upon putting in my points into this motivator coach tree and actually develop this talent. So, but like I said, it doesn't even matter which route you go necessarily. It's but making it part of your decision making and making it part of the experience is going to make this a much more deep and fulfilling experience, in my opinion. So like I said, just be conscious of it and think about it in this way. Pull up the fucking map if you want, like I did. I'm literally looking at a map here, you know what I mean? But I think this is just yet another way to make this experience more fun for yourself. Okay, so tip number 9 is going to be using multiple user teams. This one sounds a little bit crazy, I'm not gonna lie to you. And I would have never have done this if you asked me 5 years ago, and I've never tried it. But I got to a point playing college football, revamped, and slash NCAA 14 so much over the years, because I don't play like any other video games really. So I got to the point where the entertainment just wouldn't last as long for me. So once I was reaching year 3, 4, 5, I was just getting bored for whatever reason. But I found that changed once I tried doing a dynasty with 2 teams or even 3 user teams. And you just have more variance, right? If one of those teams is having a bad year, it's tough to fight through a bad year in the game sometimes, because you got to play 12 straight games, you know what I mean? And if you're playing on hard ass sliders like me, you're getting your ass beat for 12 straight games, and that can be tough. Or if you just get bored of just playing, in the same system over and over. But I think that's where something like we talked about earlier, using your coordinator's playbooks, it's just creating more variance, right? You have to try different things, and whenever you try different things, it's creating new problems, and you just got, it makes it tougher. And I think that the multiple teams approach does help with keeping things fresh, and that's just my opinion. But like I said, it's not going to be for everybody. None of these are going to be for every single person, but it's something you can try. A question you might have about the multiple teams: what happens if my teams play each other? It's not going to happen often. There's 134 teams in the game now, but if it happens, there's a few different things you can do. At the end of the day, it's your world, your game, your experience, do what you want. But the way I would probably do it is I got 2 controllers, so I'd probably play offense against, I'd play my one offense against the CPU defense of the other team, and then I'd switch. I'd play both offenses basically the whole game and see where it goes. Or you could just straight up do coach mode. You could just sim the game if you wanted, or you can sit and you can watch the sim. Any way that you want to do it. Like I said, this is all ultimately up to you, but that's the way I would do it. And then the same thing for recruiting. You could just full on, if there's a player that's on the boards of multiple teams, recruit, you know what I mean? Give them all the points, recruit exactly how you really recruit, and see who wins, shit like that. It's not a perfect system, but if you find yourself growing bored of the dynasties quickly for whatever reason it is, if the entertainment value just depletes once you're 4 or 5 years in, try this honestly. Definitely try multiple teams at the same time, and for me, it makes it feel so much more fresh. Okay, so the 10th and final tip here is going to be so simple. It's just pay attention to what's happening in your dynasty. And by that I mean just track what's going on. Pay attention to it. Week after week, for example, me, I go into scores and schedules. I'm a little bit psychotic with it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'll check all I'll go into the game and be like, okay, game 1, check out the game summary, player stats for both teams, and then go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Spend like 30 to 60 seconds on each one. Probably closer to 60 to 90 seconds if I'm being honest. And I do that for all of them. Obviously, you don't got to go that hard, right? I care about understanding what's going on, the story for each team. That shit matters to me and creates a very immersive experience for me. I have no problem spending 20 minutes in between each week looking through this stuff, because that's what creates an experience that actually makes me want to come back to it. If I'm just playing games, I get fucking bored. I would just go play online all day, you know what I mean? I wouldn't spend time making a Dynasty if that's what I desired. I don't just desire playing the game. I need it to feel like a real world. And shit like this, it's going to be nice. Say, I'm just going to throw out a random ass scenario. Let's say that PJ Fleck, right, the head coach for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, let's say in your year one of your Dynasty, he somehow goes 9-3 during the regular season. And then he ends up and goes and wins the bowl game. He's 10-win. He's 10-win in the first year of your Dynasty. Nobody would expect that, right? That would be kind of crazy. Nobody expects Minnesota to go 10-win, but crazier shit's happened, I think, you know? So, and then let's say Kansas, Lance Leopold, let's say that he has such a good year that he ends up going to the NFL, right? We know that coaches can leave for the NFL now. And then PJ Fleck, he's going to be probably a high candidate after having such a good year with a relatively mediocre program. Don't come at me right now, Golden Gopher fans. I love you. But listen, so if that were to happen, say you were in year 2 your Dynasty just regularly playing, and then you're loading up the game, and then it shows randomly, oh yeah, PJ Fleck, and you're like, whoa, for Kansas? You would have no idea how that even happened. If anything, you'd just be like, that's just kind of goofy, right? That's weird. How'd he end up here? What happened to Leopold? Whenever you're paying attention to this stuff, actually tracking this stuff, that creates a very fun story, right? Like, oh my God, PJ Fleck out of nowhere, right now he's like in real life, he's like on the hot seat, but he really turned it around, went crazy, and then went and got hired at this new program. Like, it just adds a lot more immersion to the experience. And like I said, you don't have to go through like me and be crazy and like do it to this extent, but you know what you could do? You could sort it by, where is it at? Top 25, and just look at the ranked opponents, right? See what is happening with the best teams, or see teams that start off ranked, and then at the end of the year, you notice, oh man, they went 5-7. That's kind of crazy. Even shit that simple, it adds a lot to the experience. And this is, like I said, this is for people that feel like once they start getting a few years into the Dynasty, the entertainment is starting to dissipate for them, and you need to recapture that somehow. I think this is a good way to do it. Just follow all this stuff. Follow the player stats week by week. Follow the Heisman Watch, players of the week, all these different things. And in my opinion, it really creates a more realistic feeling world. And it's something so simple. It's literally just sitting down and reading for like 15 minutes. Like, it's it. Just going through all the information and just understanding what's happening in this world that you're creating. And it's something for me that is non-negotiable. I need to do it every week for my Dynasties, and it's one of the greatest things that keeps it feeling fresh, keeps it feeling real. Okay, and that's it. That's all of them. That's 10 tips that will hopefully help you find more fun, more depth, more immersion in your Dynasty experience for College Football 25. Like I said, definitely, please, if you have ones that I didn't state here, put them in the comments so other people can see. Anybody that's here right now, they're looking for the same exact thing. They saw the title. They know what it's about. This is what they're looking for. So, and I'm interested. I want to fucking see, you know what I mean? I'm always looking for different ways to make the Dynasty experience more rich, you know what I mean? So definitely go ahead and comment that. Also, if you're still here and you haven't liked, press the fucking like button, please. $0, that's how much it costs. Just do it, press it. But listen, yeah, just thanks for watching. I still have to get to the damn recruiting video. I know I gotta recover all the recruiting information from the Dynasty deep dive. I'm working on it. Takes a while, man. There's a lot of information in that. So give me a second, but appreciate you for watching, and later.